Welcome to the Past Lives Cafe. I am your host, Chione, an intuitive energy worker and acclaimed past life regressionist. Come with me as we journey through the spiral of time to forgotten places. I am so happy to have Becca Ormont with me. I met Becca when I was interning as a QHHT practitioner, and she and I have been able to continue to be friends over social because we don't live very close together. But I understand that I do have a standing dinner invite anytime I'm in the area. She is just very talented, great energy, and you graciously agreed to do this podcast with me. So thank you, Becca. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
I know that you have had a ton of past life experiences. Do you consider yourself a junkie?
I think I'm just a woo-woo junkie in general,
I
or
get that.
a victim of my own curiosity. I haven't had a ton of professional regressions. I've only done professional regressions twice. I've had meditations where
Mhm.
I'm assuming doing my own type of regression, if that's a thing that's allowed.
When I was reaching out to Trial Balloon to see what people thought about past life regression before I decided to do a podcast. So I wanted to see if it's just you and me and your husband that were into this. And you, thankfully, for convincing him. But seriously, I wanted to trial balloon this idea. I just threw out a couple threads and people came out of the woodwork, primarily having dreams, recurring dreams. They think it's a memory of a past life. Some, whenever they meditate in a certain way or want to connect a certain way, they drop in and see the same things. Others have had group regressions. If we believe that we've been here in eternity or time is a spiral and there is no beginning or end, why not have a million past lives or an infinite number of lives?
I agree. It's interesting that you say that. I would assume that more people would come out of the woodwork for this type of thing because I think a lot of people won't admit how curious they are about this realm that we live our lives in. And it's funny, I had a girlfriend for her holiday party this year. She always does something fun, like they had a magician one year, they had someone do caricatures. And she reached out to me and was like, hey, I want to do tarot card reading. Will you help me find a tarot card reader? I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Of course, on it. And I had to, of course, ask how many guests are you having and this, that, and the other. And she was like, okay, well, we're going to have about 50 people, but they're not all going to get readings. Every single person there was in that line. People want to know. People want to know. Even if it's just in their mind, they're saying, I'm just doing this for fun. No, you're not. You want to be told something. You want to know a secret. You want to know a secret about yourself to help you understand yourself better. I think people are more curious than they would like to let on in polite society.
The party atmosphere is the perfect brush off, right? Ah, we were at a party, everyone's having a good time. Why not?
Yeah.
But why do you think past life regressions have captured people's interest? I've had people contact me from all over the country asking me about QHHT and doing regressions. I'm stunned at the number of people that want to connect on that, whereas tarot tells you something about now.
Right. Well, I personally, this is all opinion, have kind of two theories. The first one being the woo woo theory, which is I do believe that we're going through an awakening now. Kind of credit the internet to it a bit is that you can have a curiosity and find that out right away, whereas years ago, you had to go to the bookstore and you had to go to the new age section. Even if you're even a little curious, you just wanted to learn something about meditation, which isn't even that woo woo. So I credit the internet to people having this information right away and getting more information faster and also finding a community of people who also are interested in that. But also with that awakening, I guess they're not separate theories or hand in hand, but with that is curiosity. So the people I know who are not woo woo at all, but are interested in past life regression, they typically are trying to get to the root of something that's bothering them in their life and they cannot find it. Like one of the initial things, and I still haven't gotten the answer for it. Well, maybe I have, but I'm terrified of needles, absolutely terrified of needles. Even for a flu shot, pass out on the floor. Well, I must have had a past life where I OD'd or something horrible happened to me with needles. It's very strange.
That's always been a fear of yours your whole life?
Well, I guess it started when I was probably 10ish. I just started hitting the deck and just like passing out. Every time I've done a past life, I'm like, is this going to be the one? I'm sitting here like hunting for it. And it's not. It's just me. That's just something I have to deal with. I just don't like needles. I remember I had a coworker who posted on Facebook one time, like, hey, I'm really interested in doing a past life regression therapy for a mental health thing. There's this thing and I just can't get over it. I'm wondering if it's past life related and she want to do it. And I'm like, whoa, you too? Like, wow, didn't see that coming. So almost in a vein of curiosity mixed with people being more aware, even if they're not consciously aware, but subconsciously aware of the awakening that's happening. I think that more people are becoming aware of the subtle energies that are around us and getting more open minded.
I have seen that even within the past 10 years, how much that interest has shifted. I've always been woo woo, and the attention on certain topics has exploded.
Mhm.
I totally agree with your perspective. It's important what you said about mental health. Traditional Western medicine is throw a pill at it or go to therapy and talk through it. And while both of those are super awesome and fix things, they don't necessarily address our spirit. And this does sound woo woo, but there are times when your spirit isn't well and it needs to be included or addressed separately or in concert with these other parts of us.
I agree. That comes with the wholeness factor. You have to be whole and can't treat one and not the others.
When I was seeing the term integrative practitioner, I was hoping the spiritual piece would be more prevalent. But maybe we'll see it more so as different people are getting degrees in, with their MDs and naturopathy. Maybe we'll start to see it more.
I have a girlfriend who is a psychologist and a therapist, and she identifies as a witch. She's very energetically focused person. So I personally love seeing that. I love seeing people out in the real world doing real things with real big brains who also believe that I'm not insane for experiencing the things that I do. She's my check-in person. I'll always say, Sarah, I'm feeling this weird vibe and I need to talk to you about it. You have permission to ever reach out to my husband if I say something to you that is so off the wall that I need to go in institution. We have never gotten there, thank the Lord. Sometimes I'm like, I am just off my rocker. And she's like, no, you're not, because I've experienced this, or this is a thing that's happening. So many of my clients are experiencing this at the same time. And I'm like, oh, okay. At least I'm safe.
Becca, you need to be careful to watch for any paperwork being done that you're not aware of, being signed behind your back. Yeah. No, I think that's super cool that you have someone that can do that check for you because a lot of times, especially when we are talking about things spiritual, we know it can sound off the wall to a lot of people. And I have witnessed so many past life regressions when they were through and kind of integrating the experience. They've looked at me and said, you think I'm crazy, don't you? Is this my imagination? Am I just searching for something, maybe a middle ground kind of imagination, but maybe I'm tapping something here to, full blown. I was a witch. I was hanged. I was burned at the stake. I have witch wounds.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts? Do you think the past life is
Go with our imagination.
truly a past life?
I don't know.
I love that.
Have to keep that in mind. Yes, I believe they are past lives. I don't like to break myself up into parts, but another part of me goes, this is your imagination walking you through an archetype, a situation that is the human experience that in some way relates to what you're going through now. I'm going to show you this so we can walk through it in a way that's a little bit distant, but close enough that it feels real. Yeah, it's just like in dreams. There is a level of safety there, and that's also what your brain does at night is it goes, let's walk through this situation that came up in your day that you weren't willing to face right then. So let's do it in the dream and work through it, trying to integrate it. That being said, I want it to be a past lives. Not that my past lives are anything amazing, and the ego in me wants to be like, "Oh, I was a princess in a past life," or, something really cool, because that would just be awesome, but that has not been the case for me. In that vein, does kind of give me the ego check that I need. So, like, kind of initially when I was going into the past life world, and I did with the Brian Weiss books, my sister-in-law gave it to me. She was like, "You need to read it. It's right up your alley." And she was, damn right. And yeah, my ego really wanted to be something super cool in a past life. I just don't think that that's necessarily true. But the fact that I have never been something incredible in a past life kind of makes me go, maybe it is real then, because if it was my imagination, I would be Cleopatra. If it was my imagination, I would be, somebody really cool. I would be Boudica. I would not the boring things I have been.
You would think if it's my imagination, I would have been a little more creative than that. If you're comfortable, I'd love to talk about the past life you observed while we were together. No, you were not Cleopatra. Not everyone can be, but I thought it spoke to the foundation of freedom that you, as the person in that life, wanted so desperately and then wanted to hold on to. It superseded everything you did. How often does someone live that intentionally, either in a past life or in a current life?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is probably the coolest past life that I've had. In my past life regression, it started obviously as like a young girl and went through my lifespan as a what I can only assume is like a Western Pueblo, potentially Navajo woman. I'm assuming Pueblo, but she lived in like a mud
Mhm.
house that was oblong, connected to other houses. So obviously afterwards I went and did my research because I am that person. As a little girl, I remember I was wearing like these moccasins with red and white and yellow colored beads on them. And I used to love to run through the desert. And my grandmother, whenever our family would go into town to buy things in this big truck, my grandma would tell me to go and run through the desert and collect things for her, like bones and stones and steer horns and just whatever things I could find and bring them to her. And she would make those into jewelry for our family and for people who also lived around us. And she was the wise woman of that little small village or whatever we were. And in terms of the freedom theme, I hated when my family was home because I kind of had to stay close. I had to stay in the house, which was really hot or really chilly and dank and moist all the time. I didn't like feeling tied to the house. I liked to be out running around. It was a fun little secret between me and my grandma that she would give me permission to run as long as I looked out for snakes. And then as a teenager, an older teenager, like 17, 18, married a man who I remember drove a blue Studebaker. And he basically said he's going to take me away from all this. This is so primitive. I was so beautiful. I deserved to be where all the pretty lights were. So we went to what I can only assume is Nevada, Las Vegas-y, lots of like city life and this, that, and the other. And we got married and all of that. It was so funny because I was actually going to reach out to you before you reached out to me to tell you the weirdest thing, as you can tell, I'm a very verbose person. I talk a lot. In that past life, as me, Becca, laying on the couch, I remember having such a hard time communicating to you what I was seeing, which was frustrating to me as a talker. But I can remember you would ask me something and I would say it, but it would, one, take me a while to find the words. And two, I remember I just kept saying, he deals with machines. It's machines. I don't know what to tell you. They're machines. And you're being like, well, what kind of machines? In my head, I'm going, it's an oil machine. It's like an oil rig. It's doing this. Like, I know what that is. I know what that is, but I couldn't tell you in that state, which is very interesting. But spoke to her life, very reserved, quiet, stranger to that world. She goes, I go, whoever goes to Nevada. We live in a small apartment that's dark, gray, and green and boring, and I hate it. My husband, who used to really dote over me, now is absorbed in business and he's gone all the time. I'm just stuck in a cage. I don't see my family because it's a long drive and I'm just miserable. And then we moved to the suburbs to this big, beautiful home that also felt like a cage of isolation. The women in the neighborhood didn't want to talk to me because I was that weird Pueblo girl. I was somewhere where I didn't belong. So I spent most of my time in the house or walking. I would just walk and walk and walk and walk and find little bones and roadkill. And I would go bury it in the backyard and wait for it to decay to go bury the bones back up and hide them under the bed. It was this fun little secret I had with myself that I could hide my spirituality, really, if you think about
Mhm.
it, bed from my husband who was like this. You're so gross. But yeah, I felt very caged. I thought constantly, thinking so deeply and so trapped in my loneliness. And there was no escape. I just like all I could do was walk and do these little things for myself that made me feel like I was back home in that freedom space of running through the desert. And he died at a pretty early age. He was probably in his early 40s. I just can remember what he looked like. I never saw myself, I don't think, like my face. But anyway, he died. We never had children because I did not want to bring them into a cage themselves because they would be a part of me and they would also be very aware they're caged. And I couldn't do that to them. Also, it was a way to tie me more to him and
Mhm.
to his family and his way of life. I was not willing to give that up. He passed, and it sounds terrible to say, I didn't really care.
That's exactly what you said then.
I
You
was like,
said, in fact, you were happy. There was something
yeah.
about a necklace he had given you and you didn't want it.
Oh, I
It
don't
was
remember
a
that.
diamond necklace. A diamond necklace he had given you, and you were like, "Dude, I don't want this. I want to go home."
Right. And I remember his mom being so upset. She despised me because, I was just like it was like I was dirty, they were just like, ugh, and they didn't want to talk to me unless they had to. Everything I did was met with disgust. She was mad because I wouldn't have children. So she was mad at me for that. And then after he passed, I just remember finally being like, oh, I can breathe. I can get out of here. Even that whiff of fresh air was enlivening. I remember telling his mom, you take the house, you deal with all of this. I'm getting out of here. I'm running away from this. I cannot be here. And I got to go back to my people, back to the village. I don't know if I helped my parents, but they weren't in the same house. I don't know if they did that themselves or I did, but they were in a bigger space with these big windows and a wooden deck that you could walk out on and just see the desert and mesas and all this amazing stuff. And I didn't live with them. I lived in a hotel or something that was like in town, but just being back on that land and with people who accepted me as who I was and I wasn't a novelty,
Right.
just feel that thickness of being with your own people was fantastic.
I remember when you were telling me that you were just handing every item that your husband had ever given you, the house, everything, over to his family, and you said, "I'm done with it. I don't even want it." People were saying, "Well, don't you want this?" And you were like, "Nope,
Nope,
I'm out of here."
not here.
It was interesting because this person was not interested in the trappings of wealth, which is one of the things he had enticed you with, which is your parents, your family is poor, which I don't think you knew. You knew your dad worked hard. I do remember that. Your dad was always working and he could be grouchy by the end of the day.
Also being very quiet. He wasn't mean, but he would just come home and not say anything
He was
and
wiped out.
just worn down. I do remember very much towards the about my husband's family, and that was like, I can remember not ever being necessarily mad. I was more confused about the way that they felt about me. And I also wish I could have more of her in me because she was non judgmental. She wasn't like, they're bad people. They're so mean to me. Wow, they are so different. They're so different. They have all this stuff. She was confused as to why they would think that she wanted these things. The freedom she craved, they had no concept of it. Felt bad for them in a way because they couldn't get it. They were just, yeah, but look at this beautiful house. Don't you want to have kids and the car? And
Yeah, it wasn't even a, "No, I don't want it." It was never even a thought that that would even be
might as well give you an old tennis shoe.
this didn't even factor into your conception of what anyone would want.
Right.
And then I remember, and I felt for you because when you found out your grandmother died, you were heartbroken. You were super
Well,
heart.
break my heart. I still feel it.
I remember how you were talking about how she had so many of the things that you had found for her or you had found together in her room, and you had wanted to get some of those things. I can't remember if you told me during the regression or when we were talking afterwards, but that it just killed you that you couldn't be there because I think your husband was off working and you didn't even know until after it had happened. The one woman who got me and I got her, and you weren't even able to share that specific transition.
For her.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Wasn't that you were sad she was gone. It was sad you couldn't be there for that event. That was the feeling I got.
yeah, I can see that, especially the transition of it all is that you should have someone there that you love and trust. I felt like that was my responsibility that I didn't get to go. And it was because of this guy who couldn't even understand that. He didn't have the depth to understand because they were white people who go die in hospitals. They weren't used to doing it the way we were used to doing it. But it's also interesting talking about the jewelry because
I was just going to say that.
well, it didn't mean anything to me because I do remember the things that my grandma would make were I remember her getting into an argument with my father, which was not her son. He wanted her to sell some of her jewelry
Mhm.
town to like tourists, and she would not do it because she would say, this is not for that. This is made for people. Now, as me, Becca, I'm realizing she was making it with intent.
Yeah.
This is something that is made for you and it is for this purpose. And the jewelry that I was receiving from my husband's family was just out of a factory. It meant nothing. It had no intent. It had no intention in it or love or protection or whatever these things that my grandmother had taught me as a young girl. That's why it was all meaningless.
And you were beside yourself. I remember you're saying, they're going to throw all those things away. They're just going to throw them away. It felt like they were throwing part of you away when
No
you were
part of
saying that.
her because she had put so much of herself into those things. What's interesting, circling back to the whole past life, is it real or whatnot? Something interesting that I have found through this past life regression in particular is that her spirit, whether it was opened up because of this regression or what, I can still feel her with me now. So now it has opened up a relationship with an ancestor I was unaware of. Do you think of your ancestors being your great grandparents you never met, or your their parents, or your great 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 uncles, and this and that and the other? And they typically have names. You've heard about them through your physical families. Maybe we can open ourselves up to the concept that you have ancestors from other lifetimes who are still there for you on your team. And is just interesting. The day I almost texted you, I had a dream and I felt her presence. I was kind of reflecting on that a bit, and I got to go outside. So I collect my children who are 5 and 2, so no easy task. I get them outside and we're walking in our backyard. We have some woods back here, and it's not a lot of woods. If you throw a rock really hard, you'll hit some townhomes. But I found a deer carcass.
You did.
I gathered up all these bones.
How cool is that?
Yeah, in her honor. And so now I have these bones and I'm making a space to honor her.
When do you feel her?
Anytime I ask for her, she feels like she's here, probably because we're talking about this.
Did you find any thread from that past life that exists in you today? For instance, you grew up in a very rural area. So now you live in a very busy suburban area of Baltimore. So do you find yourself missing home?
I get called to the mountains all the time because that's, it's funny. Whenever we drive through Harper's Ferry, which is when you start to hit those mountains, I go,
Yeah.
oh, we can breathe again.
Breathe
And it's like,
again.
I haven't realized I've been holding my breath so
You
deeply.
I do too. Right as you go past Charlestown, you're
You
like,
know, "Ah, there they are. There they are.
there's something there that
Yeah.
it's like an invisible barrier that I never even thought of that before.
Just cross that bridge, pop through the bubble, breathe again
And then the water is flowing.
in my soul. And that's how she felt about her home that she desperately needed to get back. It was like energetic rope just pulling her back. No, you need to be here. Your body, your soul needs to be here. And I do feel that way about the Appalachians. But the thread that I feel, well, I learned a lot of things. So one thing, yes, I need to connect more to her feelings of getting out to nature. Good things always happen to me when I'm in nature, and it's hard for me to walk out the door. And I think it's because I can hear cars. And that's not nature to me. So I have a little bit of a tough time, but it's absolutely beautiful here. So I need to stop being such a brat. Something that I'm learning from that I need to model in my own life is her silence. She was so still waters run deep. She was very quiet. She didn't always tell people. She could have told that mother-in-law off. She could have told her husband to go, stick it where her sun don't shine. She's pretty and fuck you. I could be a queen in my own home. And she never did. And as sad and lonely as those years were for her, it did work out for her. She did get to go. She didn't get stuck there and had kids who then have to stay close to that grandma, stay in this area where they're going to school and have made friends. So she didn't get tied. She, on a soul level, made the right choices for herself. But as you can tell from this interview, I'm a very verbose person. So I do often find myself trying to be more like her, and that Becca, just be peaceful. Go outside, stop talking.
That's an interesting choice of words, Becca, that quietness equals peaceful. Very interesting.
It did for her because she didn't get herself into needless situations. She's
I
like, I'm
see.
not going to sit here and fight with this family. It's futile. It's just going to make me more upset. I'd rather go outside, walk around, and connect to what I'm used to. That was the only way she could do that.
The brother reminded you of your son, I think. Trying to remember. I know there was a connection to your son. I just can't remember which family member that you thought that might have been. Or maybe you were questioning it.
I'm sorry, I don't remember that. Like I said, I talk a lot, I tune myself out. The thing I do.
The true sign of a meditator. I tune myself out.
I tune myself out. I can't keep up with myself. I can't listen to myself all the time.
Yeah, some people, they're hoping that they find that soul connection with their spouse or somebody that they grew up with that they always felt they were kindred spirits or feel like they've known them all their
Yeah.
lives with somebody that you just met.
I have had those in past life regressions. I've had my mom, Greg, Goldie, my child. Ooh, maybe my subconscious is trying to show me something that I need to be more aware of. Like in the case of a friend, maybe there's something in this relationship that, like I was saying earlier, is this archetype that I need to pay closer attention. But I don't know. For me, the grandma thing for this one really hits home for me because it definitely is a feeling that I have felt and I never had a name for it, where it's just like, oh, this is like this warmth, this feeling, this like caring coziness that I feel, this confidence. And when I say that I feel, I mean literally feel it in your energy field. I can't explain another way that would happen. Now I just have a name for it. That's grandma versus, oh, there's an angel here.
You're still feeling her around as well.
Oh, yeah. She stays pretty close. She's a watcher in a good way.
What do you think you'll do with the bones from the deer carcass?
I'm not sure. So I visited the West when I was a kid. I still have some things from that trip when I was 9. And I have a piece of petrified wood, a little turquoise buffalo, and I can't remember what else, but I've got it upstairs on a slice of wood. So once they're done bleaching, I'll add those to that. And just, for coincidence sake, I came inside. Greg goes, "Why are there bones on our counter?" And I was like, "Not again."
I've been down this life, and
Yeah.
I gotta tell you what happened.
Watch your tongue, white man.
One of the things that I thought was super cool when you were regressed, while I could tell that you were searching for words and you were looking around, I could see your eyes moving as if you were embodying that person. You still were very aware, very present in your body. It was more like you shared space with this other individual. A lot of people think hypnotism is going to be like we see on TV, The Mentalist or whatever, and somebody just like passes out and we make them dance like chickens or do different things. How do you characterize the way you felt being present, but there also? The indigenous North Americans call it soul fragmenting when you're able to be in two lives at one time.
That is what it's like. I'm a person who meditates a lot, so I'm fairly used to trying to get my body in that state. And physiologically, I just feel kind of heavy, but very aware, like if someone walked in that room and was like, "Put your hands up," I would be terrified and do it. It's not like someone's going to be taking advantage of you in any way. All you have to do is snap. I want to be so far in that you can extract crazy information from me. I would love that. And that kind of is kind of what makes it feel like what you were saying. Because even Greg, after my husband's regression, he was like, "Am I making this up? Your ego brain is still working." And so you have to really work past being like, it doesn't matter if I'm making this up. That's like where I just am in my spirituality. Are you talking to an entity, deity, ancestor, ghost, or whatever? Who cares? If you are or you're not, are they saying something meaningful? Is it helping you? Because if it is, then who cares? But all that being said, it very much is like your body's made of wet sand and you take the brain and the eyeballs out of someone else and put them in your own. I could feel being inside that house heavy on my skin and made me feel like I couldn't breathe and it was clammy. It's very interesting.
It's just like that, super aware, but still over there. I remember when they put this necklace around you, you clutched at it. You were clutching at your own throat. I don't want this. And I remember feeling bad for your husband. Poor guy, that costs a lot of money.
He gets marrying a wild woman.
Like, oh, Becca, don't go there. At least say you're grateful.
Didn't want it.
No, you didn't. And it was almost like another trapping
Yeah.
around your
Shackle.
neck. Yep, another shackle.
Like when people go and adopt these crazy, beautiful dogs and they have no way to keep it. You know,
Right.
you would adopt a husky and you live in a 1-bedroom apartment. Dog's gonna chew through your walls. And that's exactly what I did.
Yep.
That way.
That's a good analogy. The energy can't be confined.
Right.
And it
So badly.
after having met you and then talking to you and seeing you on social and stuff, I get that sense from you that I hate the term free spirit because it has all kinds of connotations.
I'm not that free.
She's trapped.
Yeah.
You do have, even though you're not living in the desert wandering around, well, you're collecting bones, you do have that persona of being a freer thinker, not necessarily trying to obtain things. That doesn't make you happy. You were happy talking to a fox in your backyard.
I love my foxes.
Tell us about it.
About my fox?
Yeah. Now that I brought it up, because this was a cool story.
I think she has mange. I know, I'm sad. But such is life with foxes. Yeah, I have several foxes that live in our little backwoods area. I guess it's been a little over a year ago. And I don't know if I told you all of this, or I probably did because I talk a lot. A lady I had been doing Reiki with for a number of years, she was the practitioner, reached out and said she was teaching a class. Would I be interested? She thinks that, I would really enjoy it. You know what? Yeah, let's do this. Go for it. And within a couple of days, there was snow on the ground. I was looking out my kitchen window, and when it snows and it's still dark outside, it was probably 7 or 8 a.m. And I looked back there and I saw 2 little foxes running along my fence. I about left out of my skin. I was so excited for my foxes. I started putting peanuts out for them to eat. And now I have what we call a foxhole, where I put peanuts out every day. And we have 3 or 4 different foxes. I've tried to identify them, but they're kind of tough to keep apart. There's one that's light, we call lemon drop. And then there's Stamp, who has a bit of a limp, but it's kit season. So I haven't seen them a ton, but I did see her earlier this week. Tail is looking a little ratty, and I'm afraid she has mange, but time will tell.
And this is the person that lives at or very close to a busy intersection.
Oh, yeah.
And
Your car's behind me right now.
and she's looking at the fox in her backyard. I love it. I think your husband gave you a fox.
So now I'm a fox lady. I got a fox statue with 2 cubs for Christmas. Pretty common around here. I feel like I have a spiritual connection to the fox. Everywhere I go, I see foxes. The neighborhood over there is Fox Run, and there's Foxes Hollow. There's fox stuff everywhere. I'm not special. I am special. I'm so special. No, I love my foxes.
There are a lot of misconceptions about the hypnosis process. They think they can't drop in. Now, you're a heavy meditator, so it's not difficult for you, but your husband finds his flow in different ways. But what do you think, as far as the misconceptions go, what would they be, and how would you convince someone that just go for it? It can't hurt you. Nothing but good can come from this.
Honestly, it's very similar to Reiki. I took my Reiki class, and I don't do it professionally. I do it for myself, for my family, for my friends. But they're very much the same in that it's people, there's definitely a stigma, and people feel silly. If it's going to help you in some way, why would you not? That's maybe how I talked Greg into this. It was just what if you learn something amazing? Again, that's my uncontrollable curiosity, is I can't leave a stone unturned. So for people who are afraid of it, I know I did this with my own friend who was trying to figure out her meditations. And she's like, how do I know the things I'm seeing are real? And I said, what does it matter if it helps you? Same with the hypnosis. I can understand the trepidation behind feeling like you're being put under.
I'm going to be losing control, or someone else will have control over me.
before the podcast, we were talking about bad vibes. If you go to a therapy session and the person in charge is giving you bad vibes, don't do it. People are people. They're going to be who they are. So if you have to be a smart human, that's not saying go out there and let any Tom, Dick, and Harry hypnotize you. That would be dumb. If you find someone who's as incredible as you are, like I did do a regression with a guy who it wasn't bad vibes, it was arrogant vibes. And I was like, guy, I'm going to do it because it paid a lot of money. And I did fine. He personality. It was not a fit, but it wasn't dangerous. I would never felt like I couldn't get up out of that chair and walk away if that felt weird. So yeah, just it's a vibe check. If the
Yeah.
person passes and you have something that, and I also feel like sometimes people go into these things, kind of like the person online who's like, oh, I'm trying to uncover the answer to this. Like, you might not find that. I've never found out why I have a fear of needles. I might not ever find it out, but your soul, your spirit, your subconscious will show you something that you need to know, whether it's to work through something or encouragement, or even just, hey, this person is in your life and they were in that life. Don't let them do this to you in this one. It's the same as a dream. I have dreams. I call them tricky people dreams, where people in my conscious life, I'm not willing to admit stress me out for whatever reason. In my dreams, they hand me a angry snake, and it took me years to figure that out. But I'm like, this person had the snake and they were wrestling with it and he got really mad and they handed it to me and it bites me on the hand. And it's taken me 30 some years to figure out, but that person stresses me out.
Maybe they don't want the best for me.
Yeah, maybe I should just snip, 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 cut that person out or just not engage. Stop solving their problems for them. You get bit.
One last question.
Shoot.
If you don't want to answer this, you don't have to.
That rarely happens.
You have come to some conclusions that your grandmother in Appalachia may have had some spiritual inclinations. Maybe she did healing, working with different herbs. I was wondering if you felt there was any connection between that grandmother and the grandmother in your past life.
I would love for there to be, but I don't, energy wise, I don't feel that. I know what my grandma Susie feels like, and it doesn't feel like that. She was not that warm.
Yeah.
And loving as the grandma from that past life. My grandma Susie was an Appalachian woman, and I talked to my aunt about it because she didn't identify as a witch until later in life. I think she did it as a jab, like a "don't mess with me, I'm a witch," kind of lady. She was
Yeah.
sharp as a tack. I mean, she's got big snake energy for sure. She could strike you down, but she's very loving. She was a wonderful, lovely human being. A queen of swords for sure. She was very cool. She was very intentional with her words, very precise. She was a person who you hung on every word because she was going to tell you something. You better listen. And she kept a lot, unfortunately, to herself. I do know that I would ask her things and she'd be like, oh yeah, I'll tell you later. I'll tell you next time. And then never would. She kept a lot to herself. No, I wish, like, I don't remember there being anyone from my current life in that past life regression, which is interesting because I usually do have at least one person. Oh, that's not true. I've had a couple where I didn't know anybody. Which honestly, I feel like not knowing anyone is kind of a blessing in that you really have to focus on the lesson versus getting wrapped up in what does this person mean?
Yeah, I do. And I may be remembering, because we did talk about some of your other regressions.
The one in Greece
Yeah.
where he was my sister's brother. Son, sorry.
And you thought
And
there was yeah.
it killed me to leave him. And I
Yeah.
killed myself so that I would not have to leave him. That was how, and I remember you saying maybe that is your son because that's how you would feel about a son.
You can have the most love for anyone, but until you have children, you realize they're the only ones you would probably die for.
Jump off a cliff for.
Absolutely. Tall one.
Which also
Ragged.
kind of brings about past life versus parallel life. I'm also very interested in parallel versus past life because some part of me wonders, is it actually the past or is it just happening in a different layer to this single pinpoint that we're, you know?
No, no coincidence. I just had this conversation with someone yesterday who said, I just don't agree with the whole past life thing because it's all happening at one time.
Yeah.
So for us to put it in the past, it doesn't make sense because who's to say the life I'm not living right now is my past life? And that's a super esoteric way of looking at it. But as you and I know, human beings, chronology is kind of our shtick. I find the entire thing fascinating because I have had people who regressed, which is an oxymoron, to the future. And when
Yeah.
I say future, I mean alien, galactic federation, the whole nine yards. So
I am getting chills. Getting chills.
he's getting
Yeah.
chills, folks.
I So the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, have you seen it?
I have.
I resonated so much with that movie. And I remember talking to people about it and they're like, I didn't get it. And I was like, yeah, you wouldn't. But I get it. We're just
No shame.
time is a lasagna, all in different layers. I had this really crazy, I'm sorry, tangent, but during the eclipse, I don't know. It was not that long ago, but I was in some weird headspace. Not me personally, but yes, it was planetary or an eclipse or something was going on. But at night, when I would lay down and meditate before bed, I was getting these insane visuals. It was crazy because my heart would start racing, even though I'm in a meditative state. It was very much like in that hypnosis state.
Hmm.
My body, like, I can move. I'm obviously not going to because I know that I'm safe and like I don't want to. This stuff is intense. I saw how time was working. It was like the infinity symbol
Yes.
and it had all of these arrows on it, which like represented like where you are in lifetimes. If the infinity turned, it was like the donut from Everything Everywhere. And it was just like how time, everything happened in an instant. Time is happening and is over. And I know that sounds batshit insane, but in the visual and in the meditation, it was so eye opening. And I was like, oh my God, time doesn't exist. We don't exist. It's existing at the same time. It already happened. It's continuing. Couldn't even
That's
explain
right.
it if I tried.
It's like that movie Crash with Sandra Bullock, where she's trying to run out and save her husband from an accident and ends up causing it.
Oh, yeah.
She goes back and tries, I think she causes it, but anyway, part of QHHT, different than a past life regression, is staying connected even when the past life portion is put away. We then have a direct conversation with your higher self. I remember your higher self telling you to admit you were a medium, could hear spirit, and talk to foxes. It told you to get quiet enough so that you could understand what the voices were saying. Not that she's in a psychosis, but that you heard whisperings and that if you got quiet enough, you could tune in. Have you done that?
Yes. That's like walking outside, walking into nature. That's one of my threads. Okay. You need to get outside because I can remember in that past life. I don't know if you remember, but I would love the wind in my hair.
Yes.
That's how my grandmother would speak to me after she had passed. Was
Yes.
the wind blowing through my hair, her speaking to
Oh,
me,
beautiful.
touching my hair, and I could feel her through the wind. And that's why now, and granted, the weather definitely helps, but I have a bad millennial tendency to go, I have 30 minutes of free time. Maybe this is also a mom of young children tendency, but I got to watch some true crime. I got to sit down in front of the TV, got to get it in while I can, you know, what's happening on Dateline. And I'm like, no, Becca, you need to put your feet on the ground and walk outside. Every time I do, something good comes through that is helpful or meaningful to me or someone else. And so just I'm trying to get myself out of my house because I'm definitely a house cat. If I fall victim to myself.
I love that. Listen to yourself. Good for you.
I don't know if you remember, but this was really funny to me because I didn't have the bravery to ask. When you asked, what do you want to ask your higher self? The thing I didn't, because I didn't want to sound like a Looney Tune, didn't want to ask myself was what frequency I vibrate or that I resonate with. I'm trying to do some crystal bowl sound stuff,
Mhm.
and it came through anyway. 528. You're like, what? And I said, 528. You said, is that the Powerball?
Honey, go play that number. You just
Whatever numbers, you know. But
really? That's what that was?
what
That's
it was.
amazing.
Yeah. And the funny thing is now I go and I'll do my 528 and I'm
Yeah.
like, bro, that's the one I don't like. That's my own ego check of you don't like that one. So that's how you know it's real.
Oh,
'Cause
man, I love that.
if it was made up, it would have been this like super heady one that you wanted to be all third eye focused.
It would have been the love, whatever.
Yeah, it's not.
My sister is woo woo when she wants to be, but sound healing, she goes under like that. He connects like that. And she's just bam, she's there.
I always tell my big story for sound healing because of needles. I passed out a lot in my life. And that crown chakra ball is when I pass out a few times, not every time, but there's been a few times where I pass out and I'm shot through this tube. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm very happy to be going to wherever I'm going when my soul is sucked into this like a bank tube, you know, but it's yellow and gold and you go, but that crown bowl is the sound that I hear when I'm being shot through whatever that tube is.
It's like the needle is piercing your etheric
Well,
something.
it causes an out of body experience, is what it does. I pass out and my soul pops out and is like, all right, well, let's go home. Maybe my needle thing is just to have something for me to pass out regularly so I can have these experiences. Because I've gotten out of my body and walked around my house before because I passed out because I cut my finger. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's how.
Or, yeah, it's almost like fear, anxiety, or something like that. For some reason, like you cross that veil. Get me out of here.
Yeah. Bye. You're cumbersome.
Yeah. Here comes the flare shot. See ya.
We'll talk to God for a minute. It's good.
Tell her I said hi.
Pretty cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was just lovely to see you again.
Yes, it was wonderful to see you and to catch up with you beforehand and to hear you recount that amazing regression that you had. And you were so incredibly vivid when you were talking. You were so incredibly vivid. I now remember you're talking about that sound of the wind. And I remember my throat kind of closing up because I could think about it being bittersweet, right? Like the grief of losing your grandmother, but she's in the element of air and she's all around you. What other sign of freedom than wind blowing through your hair? It was just beautiful.
Oh, still gets me verklempt.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for recounting that for me and for talking with me for so long, just for being in my life. I'm so happy I met you.
Oh, I am incredibly grateful for you because one, I got this opportunity, and two, my husband put his toe into woo-woo land, and now I can
Right.
share everything.
That's right. He's like, woo. But the next time I see you, he might be two of them. He might be the full woo woo.
He's Woo Junior. He's getting there. And now he's a little bit more open minded about me. I'm like, hey, listen, it's the full moon, so I need to go outside for an hour and you cannot look out any windows. He's like, yes, ma'am.
If he sees you on your haunches howling, I think that time to yourself may be over.
Or extended. He might be like, yeah, do that out there.
Thank you so much for joining Becca and me as we discussed her amazing past life experiences as a Pueblo woman in the Old West. If you or someone you know has a past life story to share, please email me at Chione@quantumjourneygo.com. If you don't want the magic to end, please check out the Mystical Mermaid Lounge podcast, a safe space for all spiritual seekers. And finally, remember, while we can't relive the past, together we can heal it. Thank you so much for listening. If you are interested in my services, visit me at www.quantumjourneygo.com or drop me a note at pastlivescafe.buzzsprout.com. Stay well and be present.